I'm Jim Lahey. So, exactly who am I and what do I do? Before we get started, I need a drink, so crack this bad boy open here.
Come on, Dave. Get it.
So I'm the supervisor for the Sunnyvale trailer park. And I was a former police officer. Before I keep going, does anyone want to hear one of my clean jokes? No? You're going to hear it anyway. What did the janitor say when he jumped out of the closet? Supplies! No? No. Obviously, I'm a liquor aficionado, as you can tell. So anyway, I can't do the entire talk like that. Lord. So, welcome to CarolinaCon. I am Surfer Dave, part of Charlotte Hackers Anonymous, and I wanted to talk a little bit about perimeter recon and my methodology, how I do it manually, and eventually wanting to move it to an automated solution I call Moat. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So a little bit about me. I'm a certified resistant anti-APT professional. That's a very nice certification to have from aptdefender.com. So if you're interested, it's a very highly sought after certification. CISSP squared. So they say the CISSP is a mile wide and an inch deep. This one is also a mile deep and an inch wide. Also co-founder of Charlotte Hackers Anonymous. It's a group in Charlotte, very similar to 2600 group. We help each other kind of get prepped for talks like this. We talk about all the different types of things hacker related. Generally an InfoSec and conference butts. Kind of bounce around all over the place. So just to get an idea about what I mean by perimeter, let's just go through a quick recap. So the perimeter is the outside and internet-facing part of an organization. So many organizations don't realize what their perimeter actually looks like. So it could be a handful of IPs or it could be thousands of them. And smaller organizations actually don't understand the actual size of their footprint. They could start off with a small business class, grow over time, and keep paying that business class and totally forget that it's even there and operating as they grow. Whereas the opposite is true of large organizations. A lot of large organizations underestimate the size of their perimeter and they leave a lot of space undefended. And this is in part due to acquisition and mergers. So a lot of times you'll have all these acquisitions and mergers, IP spaces that get forgot about. That can really cloud the visibility of the actual perimeter. So as a red team member, and when I say red team member, we're talking about the offensive side of things, the organization within the group within an organization that is the attacker, going after and finding weaknesses. So why should we perform perimeter recon? Well, we need to make sure that the scope that we've spec'd out for our testing is true and we're not going to be trampling on someone else's IP space. Very important part of the process. You don't want to accidentally go out and scan something or attack something that you don't own. So scope verification is a very important step of the penetration testing process. As red team, as the adversaries, we're assessing targets of opportunity. So we're looking for that weakness in the system that someone forgot about, that web server that's been sitting out there since 1993 that someone forgot to turn off. Those are your footholds into your organization. So those systems can be configured with weak security. A lot of things could be have default configurations and default credentials. And in doing this type of recon, you can find a lot of space that people forget about or neglected. You find out a lot about your organization's defensive side of things, as they often don't understand completely what they need to be scanning. And so that's an opportunity for you to teach them as well. So let's switch gears. Let's go to the defensive side of things. Why, as a blue team, the defending groups, part of an organization. Why do we need to perform this perimeter recon? Well, we're inspecting for weaknesses and defenses. We're looking for those holes, those gaps that we forgot to take care of. Yes, we've got our Nessus and our Qualis scanners set up, scanning all the IP space that we think of, but what do we miss? Where are we not looking, and where don't we have visibility? An example of an assessment, we used a method to do some data exfiltration and came back and said, hey guys, what did you see? And they said nothing because we have no visibility into that environment. So one of those important things to find and help remediate those gaps. So really what important space that was lost or gained during mergers and acquisition. So not only buying another company or having merging with another company, but also selling off those organizations. What records are out there that are accurate once ones need to be corrected for accuracy? So are we scanning someone else's space? Are we missing space due to lack of research? So this is important for the defensive side as well. So this is the methodology that I use currently. We had our Charlotte Hackers Anonymous meeting last weekend. I ran through this talk with them, kind of rewrote some of this, and kind of worked through it. But this is how I do things now. And I'm always open to recommendations and suggestions. But as a defensive guy, this is what I've come up with. You want to review information in regional internet registries, and we'll get a little bit more into what those are as we proceed in this talk, for more information about the organization's IP spaces. You want to make sure that any relevant mergers or acquisitions have been accounted for when you're doing your recon work. A very important step that I found out is auditing for accuracy. A lot of times when you're pulling information from places all around the globe, a lot of different data points, you're going to have information that's completely inaccurate or it's been moved somewhere else. So you have to really go through and do a manual audit. And I haven't been able to figure out a way to really automate this more than going through and making sure that all the things that you're going to go after, you actually are in charge of, you have permission to do so. Then you scan all the things, and then screenshot and banner grab as much information to look for these targets of opportunity. Look for weaknesses in the perimeter. So just a little bit of history, just for some of you that aren't familiar with how the internet numbering services came into existence. IANA was the first one that came about around 1987 after ARPANET had been maintained by a sole person. So IANA was formed to manage the numbers assigned on the internet. And later in around 98, ICANN took responsibility. IANA was rolled into that. And so these two organizations control all of the IP spaces that get allocated in the world. And the way that they do this, obviously there's going to be some political boundaries, are through these regional internet registries. And you can see this map here. You have the different colors that kind of correspond to the different registries there. And they're a constantly shifting landscape. So the Middle East and Africa actually have been going through a reorg where Africa used to take care of part of the Middle East. And now it's been taken over by RIPE, which takes care of a lot of Asia and Europe. That'll become relevant further in my talk as to why those changes are important when you're doing perimeter recon. So just an example, ARIN is the one we use in North America, the Regional Internet Registry. This is one of Hilton Worldwide. I'm just going to tell you right now that my employer doesn't want me, or I don't want to discuss stuff of my employer because I'd like to stay employed. So I'm going to use examples that are redacted, and some of the examples that I'm going to show you are completely redacted so that kind of protect that. I need to eat. And obviously, I need to drink as well. Just throw that out. So this example of Hilton Worldwide, you have, you notice there's at the bottom there's a RESTful link, so that's nice. There's an API there. There's something that we can go back to actually query this data later. And then at the bottom under network resources, it gives some information about part of the network that Hilton owns. So that's just it's a very broad example. ARIN is a humongous database. There's a lot of data in there that can be used for perimeter recon. And this is just one example amongst all of the regional internet registries. Now, some of the problems I've found with regional internet registries that the API, like I mentioned with ARIN, is very stable, very comprehensive. Others aren't so much. So in working with this, trying to figure out a way to automate these searches, Afrinic, the API has been rolled out since 2014. It's not really functioning properly. And a lot of other ones transfer records in amongst themselves. So there's a lot of times you'll end up with a search loop. And I'll give you an example here. Here's one from Hilton. And the admin and the tech are Afrinic there. And the remarks, it says data has been transferred from RIPE, who is database. So the problem there is now we don't have actual good data, because now we're going to have to go back and find out, okay, what in this database in RIPE actually holds this record. So querying the APIs a lot of times when these records have been transferred, you end up in a loop trying to find relevant data, and a lot of times you have to go back and do a lot of manual auditing on the data. So some additional lookups. So once you've figured out what IP space is based on the regional internet registries, it's good to review other sources to find possible IP space. Rapid7 Project Sonar, their RDNS lookups are excellent, and I'll show you an example of the organization I work for, how many RDNS records they had a little bit later on. Shodan, Maltego, is there another couple of resources. Whois, basic, simple Whois queries on the organization. Census.io was something that was brought up during our Charlotte Hackers meeting. So it's another excellent tool that can be used for doing this. So some additional considerations when doing your reconnaissance work. Now, when you're talking about a single organization, that's fine. You have a lot of granularity where you can go and actually investigate and look down into that organization. But what happens when that IP space becomes inherited doing mergers and acquisitions? Well, now you're going to have to research and figure out what IP space was obtained, which was moved off, which was sold, and a couple of the resources I found, LexisNexis has a mergers and acquisitions database. Unfortunately, LexisNexis is a very costly subscription base. But if you have a legal organization or a legal group in your organization, it's a good possibility that they're already using LexisNexis to some extent, and you can use their web services kit to search through their API, kind of looking for mergers and acquisitions. And going through this talk, it's not just a single, from my perspective, I'm a red teamer, but it's not from that just perspective. If you're a pen tester and you're going to clients, what I'm looking to do is come up with a way of doing all these things very quickly, because you're usually given a 2-week assessment. So you need to do these things quickly to be able to identify this space and find as many targets as possible. So if I had mentioned that before, I really want to, reiterate that it's important not only for red and blue team members, but also for penetration testers. Wikipedia actually has a pretty good API there, but obviously it's Wikipedia, so accuracy tends to have problems there as well. So a lot of times I've gone through and actually had to manually verify acquisitions and mergers, and sales have been completely accurate. But some were missed. Even mergers and acquisitions, when I was doing research, were missed in LexisNexis that actually Wikipedia had mentioned. Lather, rinse, repeat. You have to do recon for all the different affiliate companies, all the different things that you find. So it is a very tedious process if you have a large organization or even a small organization that has moved and changed names throughout the years. So now once we've gathered all this IP information and we've verified it, we've audited it for accuracy, it's time to move from the passive stage to active stage. Now, this is very important. Only to scan the IP space you have the permission to do so. Why is that? Unless you want to go to federal pound me in the ass prison for a misunderstanding, yeah, you probably should really make sure that you're going after the IP space that you have permission to do so. And I mentioned auditing again. It's a pain in the ass. I really do hate auditing things, but you're not overlapping, making sure you're not overlapping in your scanning. For example, SANS instructor had an assessment where they actually overlapped onto the sheriff's network that was adjoining to the customer's network because they hadn't properly done their research to make sure that they had the permission and the IP space was correct. So sheriff's office obviously doesn't detect it because sheriff's offices don't understand what security is, so they didn't get in trouble for it, but if you're doing so and you end up with the government or military, you might have issues there. So there's several tools that can be used to really scan through IP space. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with them. Very large IP space in the time frame that it takes to do a usual 2-week assessment. Unicorn, ZMAP, and Mass Scan are the three that I use to research, to find out what would be the best. I prefer Mass Scan myself. The syntax is very similar to Nmap. It can be used to rapidly assess things, and I can throw it up on a VPS server like DigitalOcean and be able to scan at 1 gig speeds and not really have any slowdowns or hiccups. I would suggest not scanning from your home IP address unless you want the internet provider to disable your account and tell you have malware. That's somebody else's true story. I won't take credit for that, but I don't want to wake up and have that happen. So let DigitalOcean get shut down. So identifying these targets. So we've scanned all the things. We've identified all the ports and services that are up and running on all these different IPs. So there's a lot of cool things out there. You'll find Apache, IIS, Tomcat servers out there. That's just a handful. There's an entire list of vulnerable web services out there just sitting out there listening that are part of default configurations, LAMP stacks, and things like that that end up not being configured correctly. Selenium is a headless browser, and Phantom.js can leverage JavaScript to perform queries against websites. So this can assist in screenshotting web services to help identify interesting targets. The tool that I've been using is HTTP Screenshot. I guess it's been over a year now. At ShmooCon it was released. It's very nice. It does work well with Selenium and Phantom.js. Some other ones that were mentioned. Peeping Tom, unfortunately, is no longer under development by Tim Tomes, but he's started focusing on Eyewitness. So I have to go back and actually look through and see how Eyewitness is doing things, because evidently it does more things than just HTTP Screenshot. So, comes to talking about my tool, the one that I really want to create, the one that I can never really get working correctly, the kludgy thing that I'm trying to work on. So here's the ID and the feature set. I'm trying to take these regional internet registry searches and condense them down so that I can find those relevant IP spaces. So you're not having to search through manually. It's a real pain in the ass, especially if you only have a very limited time for an engagement. I'm using LexisNexis and Wikipedia, probably more towards Wikipedia because of LexisNexis costs, but searching for additional company-owned IP space inherited by mergers and acquisitions. Exporting documentation is very important, something to a CSV file rather, to allow auditing. You want to make sure and go back and double check and make sure that you're not missing space that should be in there, or that you're not getting spaces in your data that you actually don't own. Then you'll take that and put it into Mass Scan to identify live targets. So the way that HTTP Screenshot works, so you have to identify what service, if it's HTTP, HTTPS, what port it's running on, 8080, 8000, whatever, but you can only import it in URL format at this time. I'm not the best at Python, and doing this project is kind of a learning experience for me as I go. So you have to input that into HTTP Screenshot. So getting a way to automate that into HTTP Screenshot in a more rapid way to scan targets. And then automating information on additional service ports. So your SNMP, your FTP servers, all these different things that will identify themselves out on the internet, what they are, get information about those additional ports that aren't web related. Now, some of the things I'm having a problem with right now, and this is where smaller organizations come together and they really are beneficial, like our Charlotte Hackers Anonymous. I've already got great feedback, so I'm hoping to get feedback from you guys. So I'm still learning Python. I really would like to bring this project to light. I don't know if this sounds beneficial to anyone else to help automate this process, but some of the guys that go out and actually do consultation work said it'd be amazing to have something that could automate most of this work, because a lot of it doesn't get done due to the time frame of their tests. The APIs I'm having a problem with. LexisNexis, very complicated set of APIs. Wikipedia, difficult to introduce. And then the RIRs, Aaron works great. So if you're only doing business with companies in North America, you should probably check and make sure that you're only doing business with companies in North America first of all. Make sure that the other regional registries across the world aren't broadcasting IP space in another area of the world. That's where your due diligence goes in. But the API for Aaron's great, but the other ones are changing like I mentioned before. You've got shifts in these regional internet registries around the world. They're either not working, the APIs are either not working, they're not there, or they redirect, and they cause all kinds of crazy problems when you're trying to do some recon. Getting audit documentation to be automated has been a challenge. Getting all this data into a readable format, somewhere with human readable, like a spreadsheet of some type, or we were discussing putting in a database. Being able to automate that and put it in a single place to be able to query the data has been a challenge. And then if some of the tools I've been using for information gathering on other service ports, they're becoming unreliable. If you're ever familiar with using Metasploit's service scripts and things like that, when they're going out to do like SNMP walk or enum, some of those things can break pretty easily. Metasploit, as beautiful as it is kind of a turd sometimes. And I'm thinking about taking this entire idea and moving it to something like a ReconNG modules, add that to it. ReconNG is a great tool. Why do I need to go and do something on my own when I really should be putting it in a community supported tool? So those are the considerations I'm kind of going through there. So like I mentioned before, I'm not wanting to share IP space of my employer. So rather, I want to just show an example of some of the data that I was able to pull based on my research. We see that? Okay. All right. So not too bad. So this is the IP space of the parent company before any mergers and acquisitions. You can see quite a big space. A lot of these, so these up here, I left the /16, so these are all /16 address spaces that are owned company. You've got some here that I've marked as acquired because I didn't want to leave the name that was acquired on there. So these are acquisitions, other networks owned. Now you get down here, and in Aaron, you'll start seeing some things that'll say reassigned. And I started looking at doing a 12 dot for scanning for some of the stuff on our perimeter. While doing additional research, I couldn't find out anywhere else. Just find out that's all AT&T space. And we have lease lines with them that they went in Aaron and said, we're going to reassign it and say that this company owns that. But AT&T forgot to go back in Aaron and fix the record. So now we have IP space that's an unknown. We're not sure if we still lease that line or if it's actually been reallocated to another customer. So multiple different acquisitions lead to other IP spaces. So I came up with 7 other companies that actually the parent company wasn't aware that we even had IP space out there. And I found web servers out there from '93 that is running in a closet somewhere, Windows 2000, that wasn't realized that's out there either. Whoops. So under someone's desk, they've got a coffee holder that they don't realize is actually a web server. So I used a little stuff with Excel. You know, I hope to move this into a data format, a database format, but this is kind of looking at mass scan, some of the things, the set that I would look at to start scanning on and actually import these things into mass scan to start gathering data. And then this is the list that would be created that would be fed into HTTP screenshot. And I think I had one more tab. There we go. This is a list of all the different websites I came across, or a list of some of them anyway, that come back from HTTP screenshot. I'll tell you what port it's running on. Obviously, the companies are redacted as well. And then the DNS brute force, lots of information here to run down. And our DNS from Rapid7. We got like 12,000 records that had to been kind of looked through to see the legitimacy of our DNS. So that's kind of what I came up with for this talk. Really proved beneficial for some of the things that I do for work, and I'm hoping it will be for everyone else. Does anyone have any questions? So John's saying that if you have a local library card, then you should be able to access LexisNexis locally. So that's interesting. I'd be interested to see if it has mergers and acquisitions database. Yeah, because that's one of the ones that lawyers usually pay for to do research before any mergers or acquisitions. Yes? So the question is, does MassScan not give the correct output to input directly into HTTP screenshot? It does greppable, but HTTP screenshot does not accept greppable, so you have to actually input it as a list and give it the URL. What the URL can be an IP. It's just some Python stuff that I have been I've been too lazy to actually go and figure out how it works. Not too lazy, I mean, I don't know. I'm still learning this stuff too, so. Thank you. Any other questions? David.
Mr. Lahey, it's InfoSec, Mr. Lahey, not Mr.
Oops, I don't even know my own Twitter handle. That's fine. Turns out when you make like a fake thing for the internet, you don't have to remember it exactly. Any other questions? Yes, Jared. How far along is the script? Far enough for you to help me with it. Yes. Have I found it where the IP space has been hijacked by someone else? So you're asking me if I've come across that? That I've come across where a hijacking has happened? Yeah, so in Aaron, it's up to the company to really update Aaron. So if their IP space was hijacked for any reason, the attacker would have no reason to make them think that it's been hijacked and go and update the Aaron record for them. Plus, you'd have to be an Aaron administrator for the company to make any changes there as well. So you'd have to be a point of contact for Aaron. Anybody else? Yes?
Maybe I missed this, but do you have anyone to get numbers somewhere where I'll take a look and maybe get feedback?
Yeah, it's under GitHub under Surfer Dave. I need to update what I did recently. I'll do that tonight. So I'll put that up there. So sorry, yeah, I forgot the GitHub link on there. But it's under, that's the only project I have up there right now. Everything else is still local. So that when my hard drive crashes on, like, say, yesterday morning, and I lose my entire, presentation here, I don't lose all my other stuff. Maybe I should start putting it on GitHub. I'd be such a noob. Anyone else? All right. All right. So you are what you eat, and every 28 days, your skin replaces itself, your liver 5 months, your bones 10 years. Your body makes these new cells from what you eat, from the food you eat. What you eat literally becomes you. You have a choice in what you're made of. I'm the liquor. Everybody enjoy your CarolinaCon.